The tiny office was in a warren of corridors on the ground floor of King's College Hospital in South London. I was sitting on a plastic chair, wedged behind the door next to the haematology consultant's desk. What little light there was filling the room came from the grey dusk of a dull autumn day outside. It was January 2016. I know King's very well. Both our sons were born there, and we visited the A&E department together dozens of times, generally as a result of the kind of minor mishaps familiar to most parents. A few stitches here, a bandage there. There have been a couple of surgeries too, and there was one time when life truly went on hold. Everything stopped one agonising evening when Laurie was just 2 and had an extreme allergic reaction to a Brazil nut. Blue lighted to the hospital, his body covered in angry red hives. I can still see him looking at me, his face full of confusion and fear. A few hours later, we were heading home, our panic quelled by the swift and calm action of the medics. That was one of those evenings where the day-to-day trivialities of our existence suddenly come into very sharp focus. It underlined a point of great good fortune in our lives. If you must have a hospital in your life, you could do a lot worse than happen to live near King's. A few months before my latest visit, I'd had a heart scare, something not quite right on a scan leading to a load of checks. In the end, it was nothing to worry about, and as I sat in haematology and waited to be called for my appointment, I was expecting the same. The tests of the last few weeks had been worryingly thorough, but I was trying to see them as a necessary irritation caused by my GP's extreme caution. Otherwise, it was a chance to visit the nice little cafe by Denmark Hill Station. The haematology department could hardly ignore the requests they'd received, I reasoned, and I'd already seen a kindly consultant who'd reassured me it was very unlikely this would amount to anything serious, especially given how young I was. I was 48 and I didn't feel young, so that made me feel pretty good. I was confident that this was just a case of going through the motions. There were protocols for this kind of thing, I said to myself, and quite right too. The efficiency was admirable. It was annoying that I'd had to sit for so long in the waiting room, crammed in on the squishy red seats without a Wi-Fi connection, and so instead of reading an old copy of Marie Claire, but I'd soon be on my way, scooting across the road with my head in my phone, either scrolling through Twitter or trying to make my work inbox a bit more manageable as we headed towards the end of the week. I was the youngest person waiting by some distance. The receptionist called me over to ask if I'd had a line in. I had no idea what she meant, but rather than pursue the point, I just said no. I didn't think I did. I know now that it referred to a tiny tube threaded through the body to the vicinity of the heart, which makes it easier to get blood samples. As I waited, I remembered another test I'd had, way back in 1982. That was a distraction too, a medical checkup at school. We'd all lined up outside the main hall, which formed the focal point of our 1960s-built comprehensive, with its flat-roofed house blocks and leaking ceilings, and waited for our names to be called. Once it was, the boys were told to go behind a curtain where a doctor was waiting to tell us to drop our trousers and underpants. He then held our testicles and told us to cough. There may have been more to it, but the testicles part of it sticks in the mind, unsurprisingly. I know there was some reason for it, but it escapes me, and I'm not sure it's a thing anymore. I thought about Googling it, but I'd be worried about the effect on the algorithm. I dreaded this day for weeks. Distractions back then were not as easy to find as they are today. No option available to idle away some time by watching Middlesbrough highlights on a pocket computer, or lose yourself in a virtual debating chamber hellhole run by a man with a fascination for space rockets. In 1982, I would update the league ladders I'd connected from Shoot magazine, a cardboard kit for keeping a record of the state of play in football's main divisions. Tape the charts off the radio on Mum's tape recorder, or keep a record of how many minutes to go before the next gig I was going to at Newcastle City Hall, an hour's drive up the road. It was a period of rich pickings in that regard.